Hello, everybody, and welcome to another brand new and spicy episode of Back to Basics. I am, for lack of any other options, still Pastor Don, and I am joined by the wonderful Courtney Fraley and the inimitable Steve Augustine. Say hi, everybody. So we
Hi,
are coming
everybody.
to you today with the spiciest of takes, which is basically that Laban's an asshole and is going to try to screw over Jacob, which he's been doing for a while. So, in the interest of time and keeping all of you with those millennial and millennial adjacent attention spans rooted into the spot, we're going to go ahead and jump right into our reading for today, which is Genesis chapter 31, picking up from verse 22 and going all the long way home to verse, and I'm not joking about this, 55. And because that's how far we're going, I'm going to kick it over to our guest for today, Steve, because when there's a lot of work to do, we always give it to the new guy. Have fun.
Fun. All right. On the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. So he took his kinsfolk with him and pursued him for 7 days until he caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. But God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream by night and said to him, "Take heed that you not say not a word to Jacob, either good or bad." Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsfolk camped in the hill country of Gilead. Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done? You have deceived me and carried away my daughters like captives with the sword. Why did you flee secretly and deceive me and not tell me? I would have sent you away with mirth and songs, with tambourine and lyre. And why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and my daughters farewell? What you have done is foolish. It is in my power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, 'Take heed that you speak to Jacob neither good nor bad, even though you had to go because you longed greatly for your father's house. Why did you steal my gods?' Jacob answered Laban, 'Because I was afraid, for I thought you would take your daughters from me by force. But anyone with whom you find your God shall not live. In the presence of our kinsfolk, point out what I have is yours and take it. What I have that is yours and take it, excuse me." Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the gods. So Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into the tent of the two maids, but he did not find them. And he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's. Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them in the camel's saddle and sat on them. Laban felt all about in the tent, but did not find them. And she said to her father, "Let not my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the way of women is upon me." So he searched, but did not find the household gods. Okay. Then Jacob became angry and upbraided Laban. Jacob said to Laban, "What is my offense? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? Although you have felt through all my goods, what have you found? What have you found of all your household goods? Set it here before my kinsfolk and your kinsfolk, so they may decide between us two. These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried. I have not eaten the rams of your flocks. That was which torn by wild beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. Of my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. It was like this with me. By day the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I have been in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, surely you have sent me away empty-handed. God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night." Then Laban answered to Jacob, "The daughters are my daughters, the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. But what can I do today about these daughters of mine, or about their children whom you have borne? Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me." So Jacob took a stone and set it upon a pillar. And Jacob said to his kinsfolk, "Gather stones." And they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Jagar Sahadutha, but Jacob called it Galeed. Laban said, "This heap is a witness between you and me today." Therefore he called it Galeed, and the pillar Mizpah, for he said, "The Lord will watch between you and me when we are absent from one another. If you ill-treat my daughters, or you take wives in addition to my daughters, though no one else is with us, remember that God is witness between you and me." Then Laban said to Jacob, see this heap and see this pillar, which I have set between you and me. This heap is a witness, and the pillar a witness, and I will not pass beyond this heap to you, and you will not pass beyond this heap and this pillar to me for harm. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor judge between us. So Jacob swore by fear of his father Isaac, and Jacob offered a sacrifice on the height and called his kinsfolk to eat bread. And they ate bread and tarried all night in the hill country. Early in the morning, Laban rose up and kissed his grandchildren and daughters and blessed them, and he departed and returned home. That's a long one.
It's a long one. A lot happened. So
When he's
give
like,
the new
if you
person
find
work all right.
When he's like, if you find the gods, you can kill whoever took them. I'm like, ooh, shit's about to get real. 'Cause I haven't read my Old Testament in ages.
But before we get into the specifics, I want to ask if you have any kind of general reflections on this, because there are some very interesting specifics in here. But generally speaking, what did you think of this one?
The way of women was upon her. Like
I
it
paused a
sounds,
moment.
it sounds so gone with the wind, but like I've known people who wouldn't want to stand up if they didn't have to.
Well,
During their
not to be
period.
too blunt about it for my, very many incel listeners who don't want to know about girly parts, but like this is in the days before tampons and pads or anything like that, so it just kind of was. So yeah, it's a comical device, but I love the fact that Alter in his notes points out here the what he calls the interplay between the irate father and his biologically mature daughter. And he knows how it's comical because she's pleading her period, and he like is her father and is like surprised by this. Like this he wouldn't have encountered this before. So that goes to show everything you want to know about Laban as a person, that like he does not give a crap about any of that girly stuff. Oh, you're bleeding. Okay, I don't want to deal with that. Like very much old man.
Period defense and sitting on the household gods. It's like,
yeah,
like I have to hide it. I'm going to put it under my ass. I mean, apparently it worked.
Yeah, it did seem to definitely work. Now, I actually want to roll back for a minute, because there's something that if you're not really paying close attention to the language, you may have missed, and that's back roundabout verses kind of 24 to 27, give or take. I'm going to read out of Alter's translation here. And Laban caught up with Jacob, and Jacob had pitched his tent on the height, and Laban had pitched with his kinsmen in the high country of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done to see?" What?
Don?
No, it's not me this time.
No. This is Don's connection. That's
no, Mike. I'm hearing you guys just fine.
Okay, now you're back.
You're back. You stopped a moment.
You froze.
Okay.
All right, continue. Let's continue.
Let me do that again. And Laban caught up with Jacob, and Jacob had pitched his tent on the height, and Laban had pitched with his kinsmen in the high country of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done deceiving me and driving my daughters like captives of the sword? Why did you flee in stealth and deceive me and not tell me? I would have sent you off with festive song, with timbre and lyre, and you did not let me kiss my sons and daughters. Oh, you have played the fool." And it goes on for a while here. But what's interesting here is in the previous chapter, we get Leah and Rachel, and we talked about this in the last episode, realizing that Laban regards them as chattel, almost as like farm animals to be sold off for profit. Here we get something that this may be familiar to Americans who may be watching this. I'm going to read from Alter's notes here. The common translation in verse 26 of carrying off kind of fudges the brutality of Laban's language. The verb nahag used here is often used for the driving of animals, and is actually the same term that's used in verse 18 for Jacob's driving of his livestock. So he starts by accusing Jacob of treating his daughters like livestock,
and then he shows his own ass.
And then here comes
and proves that what Rachel and Leah were thinking is exactly accurate. That
here comes the second part of it.
God damn
it. Like captives of the sword. The daughters had spoken of their fathers treating them like chattel. Laban, on his part, when speaking of this, chooses a simile with ominous military implications, suggesting that Jacob's behavior was like that of a marauding army which seizes young women to serve as sexual and domestic slaves. It is surely not lost on Jacob that Laban is the one leading a group of armed men. So here we have him showing up basically with all the guns saying, why are you threatening me? Does this logic sound familiar to anybody?
Okay, I don't have the spoons for U.S. politics right now.
Suffice it to say, projection has existed for a great number of years.
Yeah, it's part of human psychology.
Yeah.
Oh, what was it? Something really.
It does drive me bonkers how those types of people can just shout help, I'm being oppressed, like Monty Python style, but actually mean it.
Yeah, and it's interesting here because there's no indication that Laban doesn't mean it that way. He very much seems to have an internalized persecution complex. Like, he's basically a proto-Republican at this point. Like, you know, he's a card-carrying member of the NSA, National Spear Association, I guess, and have rifles. Like, this is a guy who's like, with an S. Like, I sold you my daughters. Why did you run off with my daughters? Like, he always is the victim in his own mind here in a way that is both terrifyingly familiar and incredibly annoying.
Laban has the same energy as in my many years of working fast food. The people who would demand both new food and their money back. No, my dude, it does not work that way. But I finally found what I was looking for to ask about during the reading. I was like, what the fuck? Verse 29, it is in my power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, take heed that you speak to Jacob neither good nor bad. He's saying this to Jacob.
Yeah. And it's worth noting, by the way, in verse...
Is this a weird translation hiccup?
Slightly. In verse 24, that what's translated as either good or evil is an idiom that basically means don't fucking speak to him. Like, don't say anything good, don't say anything bad, don't talk to the man. Like,
yeah.
Like, you can catch up to him, but leave him the hell alone, which Laban does not do.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was thinking. I was like, he's clearly not following the directive from square one, but I was like, oh, okay.
So when we get to verse 29, or was it 29 you said? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I planned to do evil to you, but your God said don't do good or evil. My God said you shouldn't talk to you. So here I am. Like, again, we have that same sort of both circularly weird logic that is super common in America these days, where like, your God told me not to do the thing, so here I am doing the thing. Praise me for not doing worse. Like, my dude, that is not how any of this works. You did the thing.
I mean, honestly, a lot of this just reads like just two dudes just dick smacking each other in the face as much as they can.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm having one of those nights where I'm like, man, the portrayal of the men in this book and the women in this book is wildly different. And yes, I know we're supposed to just ignore that.
No, it's
but like
we should.
I just feel like so often it's like, oh, you can't pick at you know, women's oppression and stuff like that in the Bible because it was a different time or whatever. It's like, okay, yeah, you can. You're talking to somebody who's taken at least a little bit of art history. I understand that you have to take in a work with regards to the environment in which it was created. Revelation, but but
I thought you were going to go with the whole thing about Michelangelo's David.
No, the David in jeans, David in blue jeans. Oh my god. No, that's not where I was going, but I have completely lost my train of thought. So let someone else pick it
up. Yeah, it's interesting. To put it mildly, the amount of testosterone that's being whipped around here. And you also have the women who are, and this is a credit over, say, Sarai from way back when, they are demonstrating at least marginally more agency than we see for women up to this point, or that we have seen for women up until this point. Now, mind you, they're pretty much just using their period to hide gods under their butt, which is not a phrase I think we would have ever expected to have come up in a Bible study. But there is at least agency happening here.
Is that the title of this video? Using your period to hide gods under your butt?
I'm debating between that and Laban the First American. You know, we'll go
I
with
think the
whatever.
former's funnier.
Yeah, sorry. I gotta be on my own team, man.
Yeah,
But
no, that's fair. That's fair.
move ahead. Moving ahead. We gotta wrap this up.
Yeah, I think the verse from verse 36 is interesting because basically, like, Jacob is pretty much like, "What the hell?" Like,
Yeah,
literally.
like, which is a
Well,
fair.
from his point of view, he's been lied to. Laban showed up and was like, "You stole my shit," and he looked around and looked and is like, if someone in my group stole your shit, they're dead. And looked all over. And it looks to Jacob like Laban lied to him.
And
Falsely
Laban
accused
here,
him.
let's track Laban's logic for a minute. Like, Jacob and Laban are arguing about two different things. And I don't know that Jacob, historically a very intelligent guy, right? I don't know that he realizes they're arguing about two different things. Jacob is saying, look, if someone in my group stole something, check it out and see if you can find it. Laban is arguing that all that you have is theft from me.
Yeah.
And so there are two different things happening here. Laban is acting like a middle manager at a fucking Starbucks here. Like, you should be grateful for the fact that I allowed you to work in the first place. Give me back that money and go continue to be poor, peasant.
It read to me a little bit like Jacob saying, okay, you've listed a whole bunch of bullshit to unpack, but let's start with this little carry-on right here that's the easiest to handle. I didn't steal your shit. Your gods aren't here, and then to immediately be proven right, like the righteous, like, see, so none of it's relevant.
Exactly. And socially, in terms of social interactions, like, that was the wisest thing that Jacob does in this story, is he highlights the one that I can immediately prove wrong because I can use that to leverage the whole thing back against him. Which, when you have people who are claiming you owe me all your shit because everything you have belongs to me, how dare you? If you can do that and focus on the one thing, you can turn it back against him in that way. But that's actually really smart what he does there. But
it's also the logic of an internet troll. But
well, trolls are mythological creatures and they do date back a fair ways. So here we are. But like, I can't get over Laban's divorce from reality in favor of his own profit. I can grasp it because I live in a modern day capitalist society and have seen it time and time and time again.
I think everybody's heard of and probably met people who are that, like, in their own self-justifying world.
And that's the thing, is this is an issue to make it social for it. This is an issue that if we progressives have our way and we get an egalitarian society, we're going to have to wrestle with along the way, is what do you do when rich people are marginally less rich? Let's take a look at a rich person who has recently become marginally less rich as a result of being an idiot. And that's Elon Musk, of course. And look at how stable he's behaving. He's very much got what you could call BLE, big Laban energy. That's a thing that's happening like this. And we have to figure out how to deal with this shit if we're going to go forward as a society. Jacob has a reasonable way of handling that, but it's small enough scale that he has some sort of power and authority. How to do this institutionally, it's a different story. But I think it does at least behoove us to recognize, and this when we talk about the importance of the Old Testament and stuff to us as modern Christians, this is really it. And identifying the fact that these ridiculous bullshit archetypes we see in modern society aren't new. Like, they've been around for forever. Like, we have them in our personal histories, our religious histories, as both hero and villain. Because, like, Laban's pretty solidly a villain at this point, but we'll see a lot of the same behavior. We saw some of the same behavior in Abraham chapters ago. And we'll see some of this again in future biblical figures as well. So recognizing these parts in ourselves and in our society is what this text is for. It's not to tell us that, oh, biblical marriage means that we should have multiple wives and sell them as chattel, so let's go back to that America. Like, that's not what this is.
Don't give them any ideas, man.
Dude, I've been watching the news. I don't have to give anybody any ideas. They're already far beyond anything I could think of. But yeah, so this is meant to be an analytical text for us to look at. Holy God, there are people like this, and we have to fucking deal with that, because if we just try to walk away from them and ignore them, they will chase us across the desert halfway until we fucking deal with it. We can't just pretend the Elon Musks of the world don't exist.
Now, what are we seeing in like 43 with the heap and the pillar? Are we seeing like national borders basically being formed?
More or less. What we have here is a kind of a general covenantal relationship being established here. Laban's got to this point, and Jacob's fucking checkmated him. Like, you say I stole your shit. He did exactly what Courtney said a minute ago, and he turned it around. And look, I ain't got nothing. Look, you've proven it. And so now, particularly because he's living under divine threat, Laban's got nothing to use against him other than force. And he just did have a conversation with God not too long ago about how to not do that. So Laban's kind of stuck here. So he tries to force some kind of covenant so he can walk away with his dignity. And you see this in verse, which one is it? Verse 43. Laban answered and said to Jacob, the daughters are my daughters, and the sons are my sons, and the flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. Yet for my daughters, what can I do now? Or for their sons whom they bore? So come, let us make a pact, you and I. Like, he asserts heavily, all you have is mine, but what am I going to do about it? I'm stuck. And so this covenant here is basically him trying to walk away with his dick intact.
Yeah, I mean, the verse didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because it just sounded like Laban is trying to say, "Oh, that many years of labor you did for me, that's not actually me selling my daughters. It's like you're checking them out from a library, and now they're due back."
Yeah,
is really what it felt like.
That's kind of his argument, except, well,
it doesn't work that way.
that would make Laban the world's first major pimp, which I don't think is what the Bible's going for here. But
all right, and on that note, I'm going to suggest we try and wrap it up.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that we do that. There was one more thing I was going to
also going to say we totally need to have Steve on here more.
Yeah,
I have one more thing to ask about if we've got time for it.
Oh yeah, and I had one little tag on as well. So go ahead and ask yours.
The verse 53. This is the polytheistic thing: God of Abraham and God of Nahor.
Covenantal language again, the treaty language, really recognizing my God versus your God. Like, by both of the gods we're swearing just to be safe.
Okay.
But I think it's interesting, and this connects to my point as well, that Alter makes here in verse 53. Yeah, verse 53. It's phrased in the NRSVUE, which is what you guys are reading. May the God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, judge between us. So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. But you'll notice that in the NRSVUE, fear is capitalized. It's not like a simple statement of emotion.
I think that was capitalized before too. Yeah. Verse 42. It's also capitalized. I caught that, and I didn't think to ask about it, but it is.
Well, I want to raise that up here too, because Alter raises a very interesting point with this. The denomination of the deity, which occurs only in this episode, is strange enough to have prompted some biblical scholars to argue, unconvincingly, that the name has nothing to do with terror or fear. What is noteworthy is that Jacob does not use, he resists the use of the universal Semitic term for God, which is Elohim, and the equation between the gods of Nahor and Abraham. He himself doesn't go back as far as Abraham, but to the God of his father Isaac, and in which he expresses and senses something awesome and frightening. So he is rephrasing the name of God specifically as kind of like the double middles to Laban here. It's kind of like, yeah, I'm not swearing by Elohim, I'm swearing by the terror of my father Isaac. Like, that's his exclamation point on the covenant here. And it doesn't go amiss that this is where everything ends. And that's the end of this discussion here. It's like, yeah, I'm not talking about the God of love, the God of peace. I'm talking about the terror of my father Isaac. That's who I'm swearing by. So don't you forget it. You know, the guy who came to you in the dream last night, the terror. Yeah, don't fuck with me. That's pretty much
the terror who tried to give you very sensible advice that you completely ignored.
Yeah.
Went out of his way to contact someone who doesn't worship him and be like, hey, just let him go.
Yeah, I just noticed on my end here, looking from the reading, it's footnoted saying the meaning of the Hebrew is uncertain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
it is, like I said, it's uncertain because some argue that it's not a reference to Elohim God at all, and others like Alter, for example, say it is, but he's choosing his phrasing specifically to kind of get at Laban here, which I think is a more convincing argument. But the uncertainty referenced in the NRSV footnotes is that particular uncertainty. And so that brings us to the end of the verse here. And so we've gone on for a minute, but I hope you guys found it interesting. So we are going to call it here for today. As usual, please join us on the Discord. We got a lot to say, a lot to do. It is popping, and I'm sure by this point we started doing some of the other things we're talking about, like our long labored and hopefully finally started D&D group. By this point, we will have hopefully had at least one of our new video anime streaming parties that we've been talking about. Like, we're putting more things together in terms of fellowship and social activity and community as well. We have regular worship. We have devotions. There's a Bible study that is, God willing, finally happening. Because let me tell you, you think scheduling is a pain for a normal church's Bible study? We're all on different continents. It gets fun, but it does happen. And most of that, pretty much all of that, you can get in our Discord server. Links to that are down below. But if you want to do something right here, right now to help us out, Courtney, what can they do?
Like, share, and subscribe.
Those are the
Comment
ones.
below.
Yeah, all of that. Like, I'm not joking that just putting this in front of extra pairs of eyes really does help kind of get us out there, because we are not a normal church community by any measure of things.
No.
Like, we do have a church, but it's in Japan, and half of our people aren't, and we're mostly online. So please pass the word around. Put this in front of a couple pairs of eyes and help us get the word out about our weird, wacky, and fun, geeky little community. In the meantime, I hope that you guys have a wonderful week, that life is kind to you, because God's certainly trying to be. Have a good one. We'll see you on the next episode. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.